The uncertainty, the anxiety and the health implications of coronavirus are all weighing fairly heavily on our minds at the moment, aren't they? There's so much disruption and it is just changing so much every day. And of course it's hard to escape the news about coronavirus, the latest updates. Even if you are trying to avoid the news itself, people will talk to you about it. It's very hard to escape the impact that it's having on all of our lives. So this is Zestology. It's the podcast all about energy, vitality and motivation. I'm Tony Wrighton, wandering around London as always, and looking into this today because I think the impact on our kind of mental health of what's going on at the moment, quite apart from our physical health, is quite profound and only going to develop in ways that we don't necessarily know. It's just so stressful. Even if you are young and healthy and you've got an excellent immune system, let's face it, we all know people who don't have such good immune systems. We all have people that we love in our families who are older or just perhaps not as healthy. And there's a lot of uncertainty, isn't there? So today on Zestology, I'm with breathwork expert Richard Blake. He's been on Zestology before, and he and I just recorded this in the last few days, and we look at the worrying aspects of this virus, how we can best deal with the anxiety around coronavirus, and look after ourselves at this strange and uncertain time. We recorded this podcast in the sunlight and sauna to boost our immunity. It seemed as good a place as any to record this podcast. And you know, this podcast is all about energy. So really what we look into is how to protect our energy at this time and how to boost our immunity and mainly how to de-stress. Loads of practical stuff. This is loaded with lots of things you can do today, especially if you are stuck at home. And it's weird, isn't it? It's just such an uncertain time. I mean, even since we recorded this podcast a couple of days ago, things have changed. There's more restrictions on travel, can't fly into America anymore. This week's podcast was going to be with the founder of Paleo Effects, Keith Norris. It's not anymore because Paleo Effects has been cancelled. It has actually not been completely cancelled. It's been rearranged to July, it's the middle of July. So Paleo Effects is like, if you haven't heard of it, you probably have, being a listener to this podcast, but it's kind of this massive health conference festival thing in Austin. Lots of people go from around the world, and that's why it's being cancelled. So we will do the chat with Keith next week, but I'm going to keep recording these podcasts just before they go out, because I think not only are people thinking about health, and this podcast is about health, they're also thinking about their mental well-being. And I really think it's important for us to look after ourselves and do all the things that we normally do to keep ourselves in good shape, because it's stressful, isn't it? There's just so much going on, and there's so much uncertainty as well. So yeah, today's podcast is all about the anxiety and the health implications of coronavirus. Recorded, as I say, in the sauna. Seemed like as good a place as any. And here is Richard Blake on Zestology. Real men record podcasts sitting next to each other half naked in a sauna, don't they?
Yeah, well they do actually. In Finland, that's what. Well, they don't record podcasts in the Finnish sauna, but I think that was like a very strong male bonding thing. That is a traditional thing over there.
That is a good point. Yeah. Well, we're in the sauna, and you might hear some banging from next door, and that's because the builders next door are very inconveniently doing some work while we're recording. But that's all right. We're feeling quite zen in the sauna. It's just kind of getting up to full speed at the moment, but it's nice to be in the sauna and kind of relaxing. How you doing?
Very well. Yeah, just come back from a few months of travelling in South America, doing various healing retreats and saunas as well. We did a sweat lodge as part of our healing, but back in London now, and still feeling the glow.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you at the moment is because, for better or for worse, a lot of people are very anxious at the moment about coronavirus, and how much impact it's having on people's lives. And I think, there's the uncertainty and the anxiety, which more people are suffering from than the actual virus at the moment, no doubt. But there's also the fact that people are very worried that they might catch this, or they might have to completely change all their plans for the next few months and everything else. And I think things like, my personal thing is, firstly, you can mitigate the actual physical effects of the virus by potentially boosting your immune system as much as possible. But also, we are all really anxious about it. And if we can somehow lessen that anxiety and do all the things that we do when we know we're at our best, we will feel better about this thing that we just can't control. So I think things like breathwork and all the things that you're trained in are really very helpful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. As part of our breath work in our workshops now, we're really incorporating some law of attraction things. We set an intention at the start of a breathwork session. We say, what do you really want more of in my life right now? And then at the end, we get people to embody that, to feel as if they'd already gotten what they wanted. Because the theory behind the law of attraction is you get what you think about. So if you're constantly thinking about your successes, how happy you're going to be, how grateful you're going to be for receiving all those things, you're much more likely to get it. Joe Dispenza is a really popular guy who's really making people realize how powerful that is, healing people from this law of attraction theory. Conversely, if you're thinking, I don't want the virus, the virus could be here, this person looks like they got the virus, wouldn't it be bad to get the virus? You're getting more of that. You're attracting what you think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, and it's one of the things that, one of the reasons I really wanted to do a podcast about energy is, firstly, I didn't have any energy, which is why I decided to do the podcast about energy at that point. But also, energy works on so many different levels, doesn't it? The energetic field surrounding ourselves and the energy that we put into our lives and our relationships, and the energy fields that surround us are very complex, and we know very little about them. And you were asking, we were just talking about feeding children food, and you were just asking a few minutes ago, because I was saying, by and large, our son is brilliant at eating, and we're very grateful for that. But every once in a while, he'll just kind of turn his face away. He's just like literally mouth closed, face turns the other direction. And you were asking, is there a difference between food that's kind of out of a pouch or something like that, and food that has just been made with loads of love? The answer is, I don't know, but I'm going to think about it now. I know that I did cook him a lovely carrot and sweet potato soup at the weekend, and he loved that. And I put a lot of love into that. So I'm really going to start noticing that. And there's something in it, isn't there? There is something in the energetic frequency of the food we eat and the relationships that we have with friends and so on.
That's right, yeah. And Joe Dispenza is starting to measure these things. He's starting to actually calculate people's frequency, and there's a device that they seem to have that can map people's auras and see what happens to the alignment of people's chakras, he doesn't call them chakras, he just calls them energy centers, because they are all very much aligned with our energy centers, our adrenal glands and our testicles and our perineum, things like that. That's what the chakras are, but actually it's just an area where there is energy. And he can map it before. He takes a before and after of their
testicles.
He's never taken any of my photos of my testicles.
We're 5 minutes in, you've already mentioned the testicles. It can only go downhill from here, really.
Bad start.
That is really interesting, isn't it? That he's measuring. I mean, I suppose there's also something in the brain mapping that people like Andrew Hill does, and they do 40 years of Zen. I mean, that is all about energy and frequencies as well. And you can literally see at what frequency your brain is working.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever used the binaural beats or anything like
that? I have, although I've heard binaural beats, you basically get sensitized to them very quickly. So there's things like Brain FM and New Calm, which a lot of people are starting to realize the benefits of. That actually comes up with an algorithm with a different kind of binaural beat that entrains you into whatever frequency it may be, whether it's something to relax or to focus or to chill or to sleep. They are doing it so the brain can't get used to it and desensitized to it.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I mentioned coronavirus a few minutes ago. And I'm not quite sure when this podcast is going to go out, but at the moment, it's almost like the calm before the storm. Everything's completely normal. I mean, we just got the bus to Richmond, and everyone's normal and coughing away as they do at this time of the year. But you kind of feel that things are going to change quite quickly, and obviously a lot of big events have already been cancelled. We've got tickets for Glastonbury this summer. I can't see that going ahead, but who knows? you strike me as being someone, because we saw each other last week, didn't we?
Yeah.
You strike me as someone who is quiet in the moment and doesn't really succumb to that different virus, which is too much news. I mean, and that is someone, I work on a news channel. I know I appreciate the importance of news, and I really love my job, but I also know the importance of switching off when I get home. Are you quite good at switching off?
Yes, well, from the news, certainly. I stopped reading the news as much as possible several years ago because there's a lot of research behind it now. Every time you read a nasty news story, you get an adrenaline hit. And when I was out at Rhythmia in Costa Rica, one of the chef there, she's a holistic chef. Rhythmia is this place, ayahuasca retreat centre that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But the head chef, she used to work on Canadian television. She told us, we used to just sell the most fear possible, and the tagline was, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stick up for journalists and news organisations here, in that you take a judgment on the top story, on the story that has the most merit for your watching public, and at the moment that is almost every single hour of every single day coronavirus. And it's not, I agree, it's quite fearful. I mean, there's not that many good news stories in the news about people who've recovered from coronavirus, although there probably are some if you look hard enough. But the problem is that is also reflecting the conversations. I mean, here we are sitting. This is a good news podcast, isn't it? Let's face it. But we're still talking about coronavirus in a roundabout way. The majority of the population are very keen for news about this virus. So I'm going to stick up for news organisations a little bit. I agree that whole, if it bleeds, it leads is certainly a well-worn phrase. But you have to, there's news organisations that I absolutely love and the values that I absolutely love as well, and they're all leading with it. As are a lot of the kind of health podcasts that I love. Certainly Bulletproof Radio this week, I've got a podcast dealing with the kind of anxiety that people feel around it. But I think, all the way that we're feeling, all this is linked to our mental state and to this podcast, because I think it is important to do some of the things that we can decompress from. You perhaps need to decompress less than some people then, if you're not checking news a lot. But do you never read the news, or? No,
I do read the news. I read the news this morning because I knew we were probably going to be talking about what was in the news. I have my iPhone set to a limit of 15 minutes per day, split between BBC News, BBC Sports, Sky Sports, Facebook and Instagram. So I minimise it to a big as little as possible, and I know if something's really serious, someone will tell me about it because everyone else reads the news.
That's funny that I do those limits as well, and just recently I've set my limit. I'm getting loads of news at work. I don't need any more when I come home, so I've set the limit to 1 minute. But of course,
1 minute.
You can override the limit on the iPhone, can't you? It says, do you want more time? I'm like, yeah, fine. I mean, I think they should. People don't have enough self-control. They should have a hard off. But then I don't know, maybe they really don't want to encourage people to switch off that much.
No, absolutely not. You say people don't have enough self-control, but all the iPhone, Instagram, Facebook, I have thousands of people working to override your self-control with these dopamine hits that we get from Facebook and Instagram likes.
Yeah, I'm certainly noticing that, for my mental state, I am someone who tends towards the slightly more kind of hyper-connected, hyper-vigilant, anxious state. I have to work harder at this stuff than a lot of people. And that's fine. I'm glad that I'm aware of that. I probably do this podcast because of it. But I do have to work a bit harder. And I am noticing that because I'm not reading so much news when I'm not at work, I still have to be informed and read the papers every day because I have to go into work and talk about it. I do feel better about it when I'm kind of rationing it.
Well, you say you're a more anxious person, but if you think about it, we are the most anxious people in history because that is how we survived. Because if we were in the jungle and there was a tiger and there was two of us, the person who was more anxious is going to be the one who is running away sooner. The other one is going to die. And to survive, you didn't have to be faster than a tiger. You just had to be more anxious than the person next to you.
Yeah.
So the people who were not anxious have basically been killed out of the gene pool.
That is fascinating, isn't it? Yeah. So we are here precisely because we won the gene lottery and we are able to get anxious easily.
Yeah.
Problem is that we don't have realistic threats anymore, do we? And even when you look at the odds of something happening with this virus, it's not that high compared to being chased by a tiger.
No, and I guess our threats are now no longer a trauma like a lion biting off our leg. It's chronic diseases. Those are our threats. Chronic anxiety leads to stress, leads to ME, it leads to autoimmune diseases, it leads to cancer and things like that. So our biggest threats now, we need to think more long term than simply how do I run away faster from a tiger. So maybe we're in a transition period from high anxiety was good and kept us safe. Now high anxiety is actually killing people off slightly earlier.
So all that said, you went on this kind of big odyssey, didn't you? And you just got back recently. Did you do some more breath work? Because obviously when we recorded the podcast before, we did breath work, didn't we? And I found that very, very relaxing. And did you do more of that training?
Yes. So as I mentioned, I went to Rhythmia. This is the Club Med of ayahuasca in Costa Rica, where they do breath work as well, because it is a way of getting into this non-ordinary state of consciousness, a healing state, without the need for exogenous substances like ayahuasca or MDMA, which people are doing a lot of research with now. And as well as that, I did a 3-week training in clarity breathwork, which used to be called rebirthing. So we're focused a lot on our first trauma and potentially our biggest ever trauma, our birth. And the breathwork there focuses a lot on how you were born, the circumstances around your birth, and reprocessing it so that it doesn't affect us in our day-to-day lives.
Wow. Yeah. So you're combining that with the breathwork that you do now.
Yeah. So when I work with clients, especially one-to-one, I will ask them, how was your birth? Was there an epidural? Was there cesarean? Were you wanted? Were you the right sex? Right meaning, did your parents want a boy and you were a girl?
That must happen a lot.
For me, certainly. I think my mum wanted a girl. Used to joke all the time, I wish I had girls, and I became really effeminate as a teenager. Like the first boy in my class to get highlights and straighten his hair and pluck my eyebrows and things like that.
You are a well-groomed man even now, but I think that's a positive.
Well, thank you. I have had to, I think, really fight to rebalance my masculine and feminine energies, let's call them. But for sure, I can see from this rebirthing training I did how much I went over to the feminine to please my mother because I was the wrong sex.
Wow. So what kind of stuff have you done to kind of connect more with the masculine? I mean, I've thought about this quite a lot, having a son and being born into a world where, most of the people in my family were women. It's really nice to have a son and be, a strong male role model for him and to do lots of kind of male things with him, as well as hopefully teach him a great deal of balance about the balance between the genders. What have you done to kind of connect more with your masculine side then?
So I've done some tantra training with a group called Raffia, and it's from the Path of Love, and in their tantra training, this isn't like tantric sex or group sex or orgies.
No, picking up here.
No orgies, sadly. It was a couples workshop, so me and my girlfriend went together.
Okay.
But in that, they're all about exaggerating the polarities between men and women. They made you be a man, and they allowed the women to be more sensual. They encouraged them to dance and be more flowy, and they put the men together and encouraged us to chant and wrestle with each other and do more things that John Gray, who you've had on here, would say encourages the testosterone. And in the past, testosterone has been seen as a negative thing. That guy's got too much testosterone. Actually, what John Gray says is testosterone is great because it brings down cortisol and it lowers stress, and men are much nicer when they're not stressed, when they have a lot of testosterone.
I've certainly read some books on masculinity myself. I read one called Iron John, which was particularly. Have you read that?
I read that. John Blythe.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's kind of like it's kind of cross between a fable and a fairy tale, but it's not a really fairy tale because it's very kind of very masculine, isn't it? And then the fable kind of links to a lot of kind of messages about masculinity, doesn't it? At times it's quite heavy going, isn't it?
It's hard to get through,
but it's inspiring. I mean, it's certainly not one you're going to read in one sitting, but it is. I enjoyed it a lot. There's another guy called Robert Glover. Have you come across him?
I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's good as well. So you did that, and you went to Rhythmia as well, the Ibiza of ayahuasca. I mean, I've heard so much about Rhythmia, and you were there whilst Graham Hancock was there, weren't you?
Yeah, Graham Hancock and his family, and yeah, it was really interesting to hear some of the things he had to say. He did a talk on, well, his findings on archaeology and things like that, and then he also did a Q&A on ayahuasca, and he had some questions written up on the board, and I thought the most interesting question was, ayahuasca, what are we dealing with? What is the scale of this thing? And everyone who does ayahuasca seems to see this giant snake, this cosmic serpent, but there have been lots of books written about, and in ancient mythologies we can see this cosmic serpent wrapped around the world. And Graham Hancock thinks that ayahuasca is God, and he thinks it is the only thing that is going to save humanity from itself.
Wow. And Graham Hancock is someone who is enormously respected in many different fields, isn't he? So that's quite something.
Yeah, and on the last night we had a shaman who he gave a little talk, and he said, I met Graham several years ago, and when I was on ayahuasca I could see his energetic makeup, and I realised only on ayahuasca this is one of the most energetically well made up minds of our time. Apparently he could just see that from looking into him.
How
in some way.
Yeah. Isn't there something to do with the energetic makeup of ayahuasca itself which is extraordinary, in that the specific combinations of plants that go into ayahuasca could never have been dreamed up by anybody without people dying of poisoning about 10,000 times or something?
Yeah, I mean, the statistical probability of actually combining those two plants is almost impossible, because with ayahuasca it's not just like psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushroom where you just take it and you get high. You have to take the plant that contains DMT, and then you have to take an MAO inhibitor, which is basically blocks a stomach enzyme. And of course DMT as well is dimethyltryptamine, is what it actually is, but we have that in our brains, we have that in our pituitary glands, and it's a derivative of melatonin. We produce it in our minds, but we need certain plants to be able to activate it. And so the question is, why did these two combinational plants come together? Who told us about this? And the shaman said the plants told us. They wanted us to take this and have these powers, have this upgraded consciousness that ayahuasca gives people.
Wow. So you did that, and just bringing it back a sec to kind of what we started with coronavirus. Obviously you've had this on this odyssey, you've had this chance to go incredibly deep into the recesses of your own mind, because you also did a 10-day silent retreat, and you did the 3-week breathwork training, and hopefully had some kind of downtime as well, and had a lot of good fun. With people experiencing this surge in anxiety at the moment, which is not going to go away anytime soon. This is kind of a new reality for a lot of people. And we're only just, as we record, we're only just starting to see the effect on business. But certainly I was speaking to a mate of mine who works in a travel business, and a year ago he was cock a hoop about the fact he'd created this business from scratch and he was going to sell it, and now he's having to, you're probably going to have to close it down. So there's a lot of anxiety in a lot of different areas. What are some of the things that people can do now, which isn't necessarily doing ayahuasca, but just to mitigate the effects of this worry?
Well, breathwork is obviously my answer. I think that breathwork is the answer to upgrade human consciousness. I took ayahuasca.
Graham Hancock would say ayahuasca. You're saying breathwork.
I'm saying the combination of both. So in one of my ayahuasca visions, I had these, let's say, conversations with people from, I don't know where they're from above, and they were suggesting that look what ayahuasca can do. It gives you this huge boost in your mental cognition. You can understand yourself better, you understand your world better, you get all this empathy for yourself and for other people, and it's hugely healing. The problem is it's very painful to take. People get diarrhea and vomit and things like that. You need to find a way to upgrade human consciousness without having to go through this really painful thing, and I think that breathwork is that mechanism, that spiritual technology. And the way I see it is humanity, our consciousness, we are like on a hot air balloon, and we have our sandbags that are stopping us from rising up, and those sandbags are our traumas. And remember, trauma is not just PTSD, it's not just sexual abuse, it's not just terrible things that did happen, it can also be good things that should have happened but didn't, like having a healthy male role model in your life as a child. That can be traumatic, and it's only with breathwork or various other therapies that we can relieve ourselves from these traumas and act in the present moment rather than acting from our hurt and wounded child or hurt and wounded teenager. So
I know we touched briefly on some of the techniques that you did when you did a breathwork session on me, but what, someone's listening to this and saying, yeah, amen, I want to get involved in that. Is there anything that someone can do now to just get going with it?
Well, one-to-ones with me is obviously one way. Come to a workshop, find another breathwork.
I'm coming to one of your workshops.
You are coming to ours on 1st of April.
This might go out afterwards, not sure, but even easier than going to a workshop or a one-on-one. I'm sure you will get plenty of new clients from this, but is there just a technique that people could do now to start deepening the breath and the connection?
So yes, there are things you can do to help with anxiety, but for that deeper level of trauma healing, you need to work with someone, unfortunately, because it is, it's an extremely powerful technique. I couldn't just tell you, do these things and go off and do it yourself, because who knows what would happen without
so
an expert.
The simpler stuff, the
simpler stuff. So the really simple thing is the 4-7-8 breath. I do this before every meal. 4-7-8 is 4 seconds in through the nose, 7 seconds of holding, and then 8 seconds out through the mouth. And you do 4 rounds of that, obviously with your eyes closed, and that is a really simple, powerful technique just to center yourself, to slow yourself down, and to become more present, especially before food, when you want to switch from fight or flight into rest and digest, sympathetic into the parasympathetic, because
that's so good.
Yeah.
So it's 4 in, 7 hold, 7 seconds.
7 seconds,
7 beats.
7.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of holding.
I think you'll find it's not that difficult after a big inhale. I mean, with Wim Hof, you can hold for 2-3 minutes and things, and also in my breath workshops we do breath holds and people hold for several minutes. So 4 seconds in through the nose, 7 second hold, 8 seconds out through the mouth. 4 rounds of that. Super simple, super easy. You can do it several times a day. Do it on the tube, do it on an aeroplane, do it before. I actually did it on the way here on the tube and things. So,
there is something magical about when we did a meditation last night before bed, and there was a lot of breath, just deep breath work. And I think I tend to not breathe that deeply day to day. And especially when you're kind of hyper vigilant or stimulated or anxious, and especially if you're sitting in front of a computer and not really doing much exercise, you don't tend to do much in the way of deep breathing. And then you were talking then about changing your energy before you eat, and I think that's really interesting, because I know I told you this last week, but our baby's had a lot of bugs since he started at nursery, and he's passed those bugs in a loving manner onto his mother and his father. And one of them was, quite a nasty gut bug, which I haven't had anything like that in years. And I feel like I'm still recovering from it. But what's interesting is, since I've had that gut bug, I feel like, firstly, I feel my gut isn't quite right. But I also think it's okay, but it's not perfect. It's absolute optimum. And I've been doing this gut health challenge as well with Bioptimizers. But there's something about the way that I'm eating that is a bit frenzied. Like, I'm absolutely ravenous and I'm getting it down pretty quick. And you talking about that makes me realise I haven't been that conscious and that connected. I think I'd be eating quite a lot less, actually. I don't want to eat less, I need to eat a lot. But I think I'd be eating a lot less if I was a bit more connected to it. So I must try that.
Yeah, and also I've posted a video from this on my website and my Instagram. I do a routine as well as the 4-7-8 breath. I then do a scan down through my body, just noticing anything that's going on, and then I give gratitude to the food. Gratitude to our food is something we've done for centuries. You used to see people saying grace before meals, but we've stopped that completely. And interestingly, on that whole energetic things, going into the maybe a bit more fringe spiritual beliefs, but supposedly now they proved that plants feel pain and feel stress. And this is actual scientific research. A paper was published that said actually plants feel stressed. They don't like being eaten, but this is now going into more spiritual stuff. If you give something gratitude, the stress goes down. So just saying thank you to your eggs, thank you to your salad, thank you to your meat, the stress that they detected in these plants goes down. So
if I was to say to you, thank you for being the meal that I'm about to have on a plate and then slit your throat, I don't think you'd be that happy about it. But
I wouldn't, but if I was already dead, I'd be like, all right, well, at least he's grateful. And then actually in Avatar, the movie, they hunt in that, and when he's learning to hunt, he goes and kills the animal, obviously, but then he says, thank you, your body will now become a part of the tribe, we honour your life, and in death you are actually helping and serving the tribe, and it's quite beautiful.
It's funny, we were just talking before we started recording about chicken, and I was complaining about how much I spend on food, and actually we recently ran out of food and went to the shop, and they only had cheap chicken. We didn't buy it, but it was £1 for 6 bits of chicken. And I don't think it is that woo-woo. I don't think it is that trippy to say the energy that has gone into that poor chicken is not going to be good for you to eat it energetically, quite apart from the fact that it's got probably a load of antibiotics in it. But there's just something energetic about a beautifully organic grass-reared animal compared to 6 bits of chicken for £1.
Yeah, well, farming it seems to be the biggest problem. I think I'm not sure where I land on the carnivore versus vegan. What's the more ethical thing? Monocrops certainly seem to be murderous for a lot of insects and things like that. But whether or not we're eating more vegetables or animals, it seems like the biggest problem is actually we need to change our farming systems rather than what we eat.
Yeah. And you just wonder how much. I've been reading Chris Ryan's Civilized to Death.
Oh yeah, I love it.
Which, with everything going on with the virus at the moment, is possibly not the best thing to be reading, because if you look at what's happening globally at the moment, it's almost a vindication of exactly what the point that he makes in the book. He's quite. I love his podcast as well, but he's pretty pessimistic about everything.
Yeah.
It's almost not what I need right now.
No, I read that and I felt really down, and I was thinking, all right, I've got to leave civilization. The antidote to that book would be Enlightenment Now by Steven Pinker. I just finished that.
Oh right,
and it's really positive. It just says, this is the best time to be alive in history, and it has all these statistics of why it has actually. We're really lucky to be alive right now, and it's really changed my outlook on life. Yes, things are bad. There's still plenty of bad things that happen, but the bad things that happen are much less than they used to be.
Right. Yeah. This is a good segue onto the kind of book part of the podcast. And you recommended Stillness is the Key, didn't you? Which Joie recommended in our other sauna podcast. And I've just bought that because I when she recommended that, I was like, yeah, I must read that, and then I forgot about it. And then you sent me that message after you listened to the podcast, and I ordered it. It's currently sitting in hardback form on my bed. I haven't actually read it yet, but I will. Why is that so good?
I think it's a really nice kind of basic book. If you're already well into the journey and things like that, you're not going to learn that many new things, but for people who want to learn a bit more about meditation and why it's so important, he comes up with all these stories or anecdotes from how stillness has helped people like Robert Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, Tiger Woods, or various athletes, politicians throughout history, and what this stillness that we're all seeking is actually doing for our lives, for the benefit of ourselves, and it's just a really easy read. It's a nice one to read before bed.
Great.
And it's very entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, it's always not. I think non-fiction is much harder to get into than fiction, isn't it? I mean, I can read a fiction book and I'll be like, oh no, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, I've been reading it for 3 hours, it's hard to turn the light out. Non-fiction can sometimes do the opposite to me, but what you want is something in between, something which retains your interest, and it sounds like that will do.
Yeah.
Along with all the reminders. I mean, look, it's a real theme of mine this year, kind of getting a bit stiller, and especially at the moment, if you are feeling that worry and there is a lot of uncertainty around your lives or your jobs or your health, stillness is definitely going to help. So so that sounds like an excellent recommendation. I think that's a good book recommendation. What about one tip then for living with more energy and vitality in these uncertain times?
I think the best thing you can do is sleep, and there are many things that get in the way of our sleep, you know, reading too late at night, just being on Instagram too late at night. But actually, if we're not sleeping, it doesn't matter what supplements we're taking, what meditations we're doing. Sleep is important for our immunity, for our mood, for our appetite regulation, for our insulin sensitivity, and of course, there are many things to do to help sleep, like breath work. I do 10 minutes of breath work before bed, but to simplify it, just allow yourself to sleep more.
Yeah, creating the time to sleep more as well. But it's hard if you've got a good book.
Yes, don't buy Stillness is the key then.
Yeah. Do you read fiction much for relaxation as well?
No.
Don't you?
Not at all.
Oh, that is my... I mean, everyone's different on it, but that is my number one way to relax. And I just recently had the idea of posting a book cover on Instagram and then kind of talking about why it's had, you know, why and a fiction book, and just talking about why I like it. And it had less likes than pretty much anything I've ever posted on Instagram. So I don't quite know what the problem was, but I think it was because it wasn't a picture of me or a picture I'd even taken. It was just a cover.
Yeah.
I'll try again.
Well, I guess a lot of people who follow you, they're about self-improvement, and fiction, the direct link to self-improvement isn't so obvious.
Well, they're going to get it anyway.
Good.
Because I love fiction. No, but you might as well talk about what you love.
Yeah.
And I hoover up fiction. It's just such a fantastic way to relax, and it is also the antidote to modern living. I mean, even in this, look, one of the best things about this sunlight and sauna, to give them a little plug, is you've got Netflix on the screen. I mean, it's just fantastic. But ultimately, I think I need less screens, and what I do when I come in here is I don't normally use the screen. I tend to meditate. It's a very nice way just to relax. It's a nice temperature, not too hot. I think we've survived. Hopefully the recording equipment has survived as well. Thank you, mate, for doing this podcast. So I'm not sure if it's going out before or after your workshop, but I've no doubt you'll be doing another one fairly soon, if not this one. Where can people find out more about you and your workshops and everything else? Yeah,
so I do one-to-ones and workshops. I'm in Hammersmith. I'm also going to be in LA for about a month in May and June, so if there are any biohackers who want to meet up for a coffee or do something biohacky, let me know. But you can find me at richardlblake.com. And I realised the other day, Richard L. Blake, my girlfriend's Spanish, sounds like Richard the Blake in Spanish.
Does it?
So actually it's just Richard the letter L Blake.com, and I'm on Instagram at richard.l.blake and Facebook at the Optimized You, and that's optimized with an S, not the American Z or Z.
So when you're going away again soon, aren't you? What are you doing then again?
I'm going to do a month of ayahuasca and a plant dieta, so it's kind of like an ayahuasca vipassana. So a lot of the time you're in isolation and you are meditating with a plant, a master plant that the shaman will prescribe for you, doing 4 ayahuasca ceremonies per week, whilst also spending a lot of time in silence.
And just one more question I wanted to ask you. You guys are doing that together, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how much you talk about your other half, but have you found that your relationship has deepened through all these kind of explorations? I bet you have.
Yeah, totally. So Natalia, she's also a breath worker and a health coach. She follows me along on these journeys. I like to be quite, in terms of masculine and feminine. The masculine is about leading and adventuring and exploring, and I do a lot of that, and she very courageously follows me and often goes, dives much deeper than me. She's inspired me in many times in ayahuasca ceremonies where I've maybe been like, oh, can I just have a little dose, and she goes in and has like 2 massive
that's
glasses.
what I'd be like you.
Yeah.
Can I have a tiny bit, but half of a half.
So actually when we do these things, during the processes, when we're re-experiencing our traumas or reprocessing our traumas, we tend to fight quite a lot, and then afterwards, once the processes are finished, we settle down a little bit more, and we're able to see each other, not from our childish wounds, but we're actually able to see the real person, and actually love that person, rather than being blindly led by, okay, if I fix this person, I'll fix my relationship with my mother, or whatever it is.
That's really great. And I've just before we finish, I must tell the story about, I have told it before, but when Faith and I went to a meditation retreat in northern Thailand, which was run by Buddhist monks, and we were wearing all white, and we were sleeping on the floor 2 meals a day at kind of 5 and 11, and it was pretty taxing. I mean, most of it we couldn't even understand, but it went quite deep meditation wise. The food was just dreadful, and I said to Faith, for the kind of last 24 hours we were there, I said, should we just fast for 24 hours and then we'll go to the restaurant that we love, that we know is about 2 hours drive away afterwards? And she said yeah. And then we had the biggest argument of our holiday 2 hours later, when I saw her munching on an apricot energy ball. And there's something about but we laugh about that so much now, because we're in this beautiful meditation retreat in the middle of nowhere, and we're having an argument, the opposite of what we should have been doing, about an energy ball, apricot flavoured. So maybe that is part of the process, that the arguments come out during. I mean, I certainly did feel the benefit afterwards, even though I found it very tough during. So maybe that's what you guys have gone through as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I bet you have really loved doing all that stuff together, and it would definitely deepen the relationship too. Well, have a great time. Four ayahuasca ceremonies a week.
Per week for 4 weeks. And as well, on food, they give you like a totally plain diet, so no sugar, no salt, no oils, just chicken, fish, and vegetables.
That sounds great. Caffeine?
No caffeine, no drugs, no sex, no sexual thoughts, no self-sex. It's a real, real purification.
Wow. That is quite something. Well, we'll do another podcast and we'll find out how it went.
Yeah, if I survive.
Thanks for the good vibes and the good energy. Having acknowledged the fact that we wanted to kind of change the energy of some people listening who might have spent a lot of time looking at news recently. This is a good time to finish the podcast, because you might be able to hear next door the builders have started up in earnest, and what's going to happen is we're now going to emerge from a little hut at the bottom of my garden. The builders are going to be like, not wearing very much, emerging
sweaty,
from the shed,
red,
sweaty and red. There you go. That's fine. I don't care what they think. They can come and have a sauna themselves if they like. Thanks, Rich. Enjoy your travels, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, Rich has got quite a month coming up, hasn't he? Thank you to Richard Blake, and thank you for listening. I hope you have as zesty a week as possible in the circumstances. Very odd time, a lot of people stuck at home with kids, so they can't work, and the kids can't go out to play. I'm wandering around some fairly deserted streets at the moment, so I don't think I'm getting too close to anyone at the moment. But I mean, even recording this just before the podcast goes out, the advice might have changed again since I record this. So all we can do is look after ourselves and the people we love as best we can. I'm definitely boosting my immune system as much as possible at the moment. I mean, you just don't know how much is going to help. I've said before, I'm not going to offer health advice on this podcast, but I'm certainly taking extra vitamin D and colostrum and glutathione, and a few other bits and pieces as well. But that's kind of that. Definitely vitamin C as well. And I'm also taking the Bioptimizer's probiotics and gut health supplements, which I'm really enjoying, and I'm really working. I mean, that was the focus of this month, the gut health challenge, and I think it's more relevant than ever. So I'm very proud and pleased to partner up with Bioptimizers. And if you're interested in boosting your immunity and looking after your gut, I think this is an excellent idea at the moment. You can head to bioptimizers.com/zestology and get 10% off. Now, it's been brought to my attention that on that site they serve every country in the world apart from the UK, and the reason is apparently they get a lot of fraud cases from the UK. So if you're in the UK and you'd like to buy Bioptimizers, you can head to bioptimizers.co.uk. Remember, it's Bioptimizers with a Z, but it's bioptimizers.co.uk or .com, and if you use the code Zestology10, you will get 10% off on all those supplements, everything that they sell, actually, because they've got magnesium, and they've got a very good one if you're not into gluten and you don't eat gluten like me. They've got this thing called Gluten Guardian, which is a particularly good idea. As I walk down the street here in London, very near where I live, there is someone walking into a house with about 10 of those huge water cooler bottles that you normally get in offices. But there's no offices around here, it's just houses. So somebody's stockpiling water. And on that note, I'm quite pleased I've got a Berkey water filter, actually, because it means you don't need to buy bottled water. You can save the planet, and that'll get rid of any pathogens and bacteria and so on. So Berkey water filters are definitely my go-to when it comes to water. But yeah, somebody's taking a big water order. Very uncertain times anyway. Thanks for listening to Zestology. Next week, at the moment, is going to be the Paleo FX interview, but with completely rejigged, basically. And as I say, we will keep up to date with the latest health advice. I'll keep on telling you the kind of stuff that I've been taking and doing. I really like that Thrival colostrum. I have noticed in the past, when I feel under the weather, it helps me with my immunity, so I just take it more. And I really like the Bioptimizers stuff as well, which is a more recent one, and I'm very happy to have met them and meet them. They've got a really good probiotic, P3OM, which you might want to take a look at. And none of us really know, do we? There's no point in saying, this is definitely going to cure your coronavirus, because obviously it's not, and we're still learning all about this virus and how we can protect ourselves. But doing the best we can and eating good food and everything else is definitely a part of it. Okay, well, unusually sober, isn't it, Zestology at the moment, but that's the way it is. Thanks for listening, and I will definitely be here next week. Not quite sure whether it will be Paleo FX related or something else, but we'll work it out over the next week or so. All right, I'm back at home now, so see you next week.